History is often told as a chain of grand events and deliberate decisions, but sometimes the destiny of nations hangs on a single absurd moment. A bullet stopped by a folded speech, a poison plot foiled by frozen ice, or a wrong turn that set the entire world ablaze. These are the incidents where incompetence, uncanny luck, and sheer coincidence collided, turning potential tragedies into bizarre legends. This is the countdown of the top 10 craziest assassination attempts in history. Number 10. We begin with a plot so bizarre it could have been lifted straight from a spy comedy. The exploding seashell and the fungus-laced wetsuit. When the CIA set its sights on removing Fidel Castro, it wasn't just about bullets or covert snipers. Instead, their strategies sometimes bordered on the surreal. In one particularly imaginative operation, American intelligence agents concocted an idea to exploit Castro's love for scuba diving. The plan involved a stunningly beautiful conch shell, filled with enough explosives to obliterate its finder, painted in bright, irresistible colors, and discreetly placed in waters Castro often explored. The idea was that his curiosity and passion for diving would lead him right to it, with deadly consequences. But the creativity didn't end there. Another plan involved gifting Castro a diving suit laced with either a flesh-eating fungus or tuberculosis bacteria, ensuring a slow, painful decline rather than an instant demise. This suit was reportedly prepared, but never reached the Cuban leader. And in a move that almost felt cartoon-inspired, there was also talk of handing him a cigar rigged to explode upon lighting, a nod to his well-known smoking habit. Whether all of these schemes were ever close to being implemented or were merely psychological warfare, they remain infamous examples of how far the CIA's imagination stretched in its pursuit of one man. These plots didn't just fail, they cemented Castro's reputation as the world leader who dodged some of the most outlandish assassination attempts in modern history. Coming in at number 9, we encounter a tale dripping with drama and personal betrayal. The lover's betrayal. In 1960, the CIA decided to use the most intimate weapon imaginable against Fidel Castro, the woman who shared his bed. Marita Lorenz, a glamorous young woman with whom Castro had an affair, became the centerpiece of a plot that would mix romance, espionage, and attempted murder in one volatile cocktail. The plan seemed straightforward in its cruelty. Lorenz would receive 2 poison capsules to drop discreetly into Castro's drink, ensuring his death without suspicion. This wasn't just about physical elimination. It was psychological warfare, using love as the delivery mechanism for death. Lorenz, under the weight of CIA persuasion and perhaps her own conflicted loyalties, accepted the mission. She returned to Havana, capsules in her possession, and found herself face-to-face with her target. But at the crucial moment, her resolve faltered. In a stunning twist, she confessed the entire plot directly to Castro. Far from panicking, the Cuban leader reportedly smiled, handed her his pistol, and told her, "You can't kill me. Nobody can kill me." It was a chilling display of charisma and defiance that left Lorenz shaken and the CIA's plan in tatters. This episode underscores a brutal truth about assassination plots. When human emotions enter the equation, even the most calculated strategy can unravel in an instant. In the grand gallery of failed hits, this one stands out not just for its failure, but for the unforgettable theatricality of its collapse. At number 8, we dive into a near miss that fell apart in the most mundane way possible: the poisoned milkshake. By the early 1960s, the CIA's own assassination attempts against Castro had repeatedly failed, so they turned to an unlikely ally: the American mafia. The logic was simple. Who better to handle a hit than seasoned criminals already skilled in elimination? In exchange for large payments and immunity from prosecution, mob bosses Sam Giancana and Santo Trafficante Jr. agreed to collaborate. The chosen method was cunningly tailored to Castro's personal tastes. Known for enjoying dairy treats, especially chocolate milkshakes from Havana's Hotel Habana Libre, Castro was to be served a lethal concoction by a recruited waiter. The CIA provided a custom-designed poison capsule. Deadly, fast-acting, and virtually undetectable after ingestion. The operation used set. The capsule was hidden in the hotel freezer until the moment of truth. But fate intervened in the most anticlimactic way imaginable. When the waiter went to retrieve the capsule, it had frozen solid to the ice tray. In his attempt to pry it free, the capsule cracked, spilling its contents and rendering it useless. This was a $1 million plot undone not by counterintelligence or heroics, but by the stubborn grip of frozen water. For all its criminal coordination and precision planning, this attempt became a textbook example of how small, unexpected details can derail even the deadliest designs. it remains a legendary failure in the annals of bizarre assassination history. At number 7, we have a chillingly ahead-of-its-time scheme, the chillingly prescient hijacking. In the early 1970s, Samuel Bike, a troubled man with a growing resentment toward the U.S. government, set his sights on an audacious target, President Richard Nixon. After being denied a small business loan, Bike's paranoia deepened, and he became convinced that Nixon was the root cause of his failures. By 1974, his resentment had morphed into a radical plan that eerily foreshadowed future acts of terror, hijacking a commercial airliner and using it as a weapon to crash into the White House. Bike meticulously recorded audio tapes explaining his motives, envisioning himself as a heroic figure striking a blow against tyranny. On February 22, 1974, armed and determined, he stormed a DC-9 aircraft at Baltimore Washington International Airport. In the chaos, he killed a police officer and shot both pilots after they explained that the plane couldn't take off due to wheel blocks. A tense standoff followed, ending when police fired through the cockpit door, wounding Bike. Moments later, he turned his gun on himself. Though his plot failed, it remains one of history's most disturbing assassination attempts, not only for its audacity, but for its grim anticipation of the September 11th attacks decades later. In a strange twist, Bike's story, through indirect connections, influenced Paul Schrader's script for Taxi Driver, tying a real-life act of violence to one of cinema's most iconic portrayals of alienation and rage. At number 6, we witness an assassination attempt that seemed to defy the laws of physics: the Iron Chancellor's ribs. Otto von Bismarck, the formidable Prussian statesman known as the Iron Chancellor, built a reputation for political dominance and unshakable authority. But in 1866, that reputation would be tested in a most dramatic fashion. As he strolled along a Berlin boulevard, a young idealist named Ferdinand Cohen-Blind stepped from the shadows with a revolver. Cohen-Blind believed Bismarck was pushing Prussia into a ruinous war with Austria, and he intended to stop him with 5 close-range shots. The bullets struck, yet astonishingly, Bismarck remained standing. 3 shots merely grazed his skin, while the other 2, in an almost unbelievable twist, reportedly ricocheted off his ribs without causing fatal damage. Theories abound. The revolver's low caliber, the thick layers of clothing he wore, and Bismarck's sheer physical sturdiness may all have played a role. In a feat of remarkable composure, Bismarck overpowered his would-be assassin and restrained him until soldiers arrived. Cohen-Blind would later take his own life in custody, but the failed attack became a cornerstone of the Bismarck legend. The image of a leader so indestructible that bullets seemed to bounce off him became both political propaganda and a personal badge of honor, reinforcing the mythos of a man whose will and body appeared unbreakable. At number 5, we find one of the most iconic displays of grit in political history, the bullet-stopping speech. Theodore Roosevelt, already a towering figure in American politics and nicknamed the Bull Moose, proved the nickname was more than just rhetoric in 1912. While campaigning in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Roosevelt was stepping into his car when a gunman named John Schrank emerged from the crowd and shot him in the chest. Schrank, later declared insane, claimed the ghost of President McKinley had instructed him to kill Roosevelt. The bullet struck true, but fate and Roosevelt's preparedness intervened. In his breast pocket, a folded 50-page speech titled "Progressive Cause Greater Than Any Individual" and a steel eyeglass case absorbed much of the impact, slowing the projectile before it could pierce deeply. An experienced hunter and anatomist, Roosevelt quickly assessed that his lungs were intact since he wasn't coughing blood. Refusing immediate medical treatment, he strode to the stage and delivered his planned speech for nearly an hour, opening with the immortal line, "It takes more than that to kill a bull moose." Only afterward did he go to the hospital, where doctors decided to leave the bullet lodged in his chest for life. This incident transformed what could have been a political disaster into an enduring legend, proving Roosevelt's unmatched toughness and mastery of public perception in the face of danger. At number 4, we have one of history's most painstaking acts of sabotage, the meticulous bombing. In the tense months before World War II erupted, a solitary German carpenter named Georg Elser decided to take history into his own hands. Disgusted by Adolf Hitler's dictatorship and convinced that killing him could avert a global catastrophe, Elser devised an assassination plot that remains one of the most meticulous in history. Without any assistance, funding, or organizational backing, he targeted Hitler's annual beer hall putsch anniversary speech at Munich's Burger Breikeller. In the summer of 1939, Elser began sneaking into the venue after closing time, working silently in the dark to hollow out a structural pillar directly behind the podium. Inside this cavity, he installed a custom-built time bomb, engineered to detonate at the height of Hitler's address. On November 8, 1939, the plan unfolded perfectly, except for one twist of fate. Due to worsening weather and the urgent need to return to Berlin, Hitler unexpectedly cut his speech short and departed just 13 minutes before the explosion. The blast tore through the hall, killing 8 people and injuring dozens, but the intended target was already miles away. Elser was caught the same night while trying to cross into Switzerland, later confessing under brutal interrogation. Tragically, he was executed at Dachau mere weeks before the war's end. This attempt stands as a haunting reminder that even flawless engineering and unshakable courage can be foiled by the simplest of scheduling changes. A failure the Nazis later twisted into propaganda, claiming Hitler was divinely protected. At number 3, we revisit the chaotic chain of events behind a world-changing moment, the bumbling bomber. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand is remembered as the spark that ignited World War I, yet few recall that the mission began as a spectacular disaster. On June 28, 1914, 6 young Bosnian Serb nationalists, armed with pistols and grenades, positioned themselves along the Archduke's motorcade route in Sarajevo. The first attacker, Nedeljko Čabrnović, hurled his grenade at the Archduke's open-top car. In a critical miscalculation, he failed to consider the grenade's 10-second fuse. The device bounced off the folded convertible cover and landed under the following car, injuring 2 passengers, but leaving the Archduke completely unharmed. Panic set in. In a desperate bid to avoid capture, Čabrnović swallowed a cyanide pill, only to vomit violently because the poison was old and ineffective. He then leapt into a nearby river to drown himself, but the water was barely ankle deep. Police hauled him out instantly, ending his farcical escape attempt. The mission seemed ruined, yet fate had other plans. Hours later, a bizarre series of coincidences would place another conspirator, Gavrilo Princip, in perfect position to succeed where Čabrnović had failed, setting in motion a chain of events that would plunge the world into war. This blundering start is a vital part of the story, illustrating how the most earth-shattering historical moments can begin with almost laughable incompetence. At number 2, we find a story so improbable it defies the laws of chance: the double misfire. On January 30th, 1835, President Andrew Jackson, already advanced in age and suffering from ill health, was attending the funeral of a congressman at the U.S. Capitol. As he left the ceremony, Richard Lawrence, an unemployed painter plagued by delusions, stepped forward with deadly intent. Believing himself to be the rightful king of England and convinced that King Andrew was denying him a fortune, Lawrence raised a pistol and fired at point-blank range. The weapon misfired. Undeterred, he immediately produced a second Derringer pistol and pulled the trigger, only for it to misfire as well. In that moment, Jackson's fiery temperament exploded. Instead of retreating, he charged at Lawrence and began striking him repeatedly with his cane. Bystanders, including famed frontiersman and Congressman Davy Crockett, wrestled the attacker into custody. Later, firearms experts determined both weapons were in working condition and the odds of such a double misfire occurring were approximately 1 in 125,000. Lawrence was found not guilty by reason of insanity and confined to an asylum for the remainder of his life. This unprecedented event not only reinforced Jackson's image as an unyielding, almost mythical figure, but also entered the annals of American political folklore as one of the most miraculous escapes from death in presidential history. And finally, at number 1, we arrive at the assassination that changed the course of human history, the wrong turn that started a world war. On June 28, 1914, Sarajevo was tense with political unrest. Earlier that morning, an assassination attempt on Archduke Franz Ferdinand had failed in a spectacularly botched fashion, leaving the royal couple shaken but alive. Determined to show resilience, the Archduke and his wife, Sophie, decided to visit the injured victims of the grenade attack in the hospital. For security, a new route was planned, but not every driver was informed. In a fateful lapse, the lead vehicle turned onto Franz Joseph Street, a route they were explicitly told to avoid. It was here that fate, coincidence, and tragedy collided. Standing on that very street was Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old nationalist who had taken part in the morning's failed mission. Disheartened, he had been lingering aimlessly after abandoning hope of success. Suddenly, the Archduke's car stopped, directly in front of him, stalled as the driver attempted to reverse out of the wrong turn. Princip stepped forward, drew his pistol, and fired 2 shots at point-blank range. one striking Franz Ferdinand in the neck, the other hitting Sophie in the abdomen. Both were dead within minutes. This was not the cliché sandwich-eating accident often repeated in popular myths. Princip wasn't idly snacking when destiny handed him the moment. He was an assassin whose perfect opportunity had materialized through an almost unbelievable convergence of human error and bad luck. Those 2 bullets did far more than end 2 lives. They triggered a cascade of alliances, ultimatums, and declarations of war that spiraled into World War I, reshaping the political map of the 20th century. It remains the most consequential wrong turn in recorded history, proving that sometimes the smallest navigational mistake can set the entire world on fire. As we've seen, history's wildest assassination attempts prove that the fate of nations can pivot on the smallest, strangest twist of fate. A single wrong turn, a bullet deflected by luck, or a plan foiled by sheer incompetence can rewrite the course of history in an instant. These stories aren't just bizarre, they're powerful reminders that the world's destiny is never set in stone. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible tales from history's stranger side.